The discovery happened just before dawn on a brutally cold January morning in 1999, when a Montana Department of Transportation snowplow was clearing Highway 87. The road cut through miles of empty land. No houses, no gas stations, no reason for anyone to stop there. That's when the driver noticed a dark shape ahead, half buried in snow, sitting crookedly on the shoulder. As the plow slowed, its headlights revealed an old blue pickup truck, its windows frosted from the inside, its tires sunk deep into ice, as if it had been sitting there far longer than it should have. When state troopers arrived, the scene felt wrong in a way none of them could quite explain. The truck wasn't damaged. There were no skid marks, no signs of a crash, no footprints leading away into the snow. The driver's door was unlocked, hanging slightly open, swaying in the wind. Inside, the keys were still in the ignition. The heater was off. A thin layer of frost coated the dashboard, suggesting the engine hadn't been running for hours, maybe longer. Whoever left the truck hadn't rushed. They had simply vanished. The surrounding area offered nothing but silence. Dense pine trees stood motionless on one side of the highway, while open plains stretched endlessly on the other, swallowed by fog and snowfall. The temperature had dropped below zero overnight, making survival outside nearly impossible for long. Troopers scanned the ground with flashlights, searching for footprints, drag marks, or any sign of a struggle, but the snow remained untouched. It was as if the truck had driven itself there and stopped. When investigators began searching the interior of the pickup, they expected to find something ordinary, maybe a wallet, a jacket, or an empty coffee cup left behind in a hurry. Instead, the cab felt unusually untouched, almost staged. The seats were clean, the floor mats free of mud or snow, and the glove compartment held neatly folded paperwork. But resting on the passenger seat was an object that didn't belong there, a small black cassette tape. Its plastic case cracked on one corner, as if it had been handled repeatedly with nervous hands. One of the troopers picked it up and noticed the label immediately. It wasn't professionally printed or carefully written. The words were scratched in uneven blue ink, pressing so hard that the pen had nearly torn through the paper. The message read, "If anything happens to me," no date, no name, just those 5 words. The handwriting looked rushed, uneven, the kind written by someone who didn't expect to have much time. The tape felt out of place, not forgotten, but intentionally left where it could not be missed. Back at the station, the cassette was logged into evidence and played on an old recorder. At first, there was only static, thick, hissing noise that drowned out everything else. Then came the faint sound of wind, followed by breathing so close to the microphone it made the room feel uncomfortable. A few officers leaned in, waiting for words that never fully came. Just a voice trying to speak, stopping, starting again, as if the person recording couldn't decide what was safe to say. After the first playback, the cassette lost its urgency. Investigators replayed it once or twice more, adjusting the volume, rewinding sections, hoping something clearer would emerge. But the technology of the time offered no miracles. The static overwhelmed everything, and the faint sounds buried beneath it were impossible to separate. With no clear message and no physical evidence tying the tape to a crime, it was marked as inconclusive and set aside while detectives focused on more tangible leads that ultimately went nowhere. As weeks turned into months, the case slowly slipped through the cracks of an overworked department. Leads dried up. Search teams were called off. The abandoned truck was impounded, examined, and eventually released to the family. Daniel Harper's name was added to a growing list of missing persons, and the cassette tape was sealed in a plastic evidence bag, tagged with a case number, and placed on a metal shelf among hundreds of others. Over time, dust collected on the box, and newer cases pushed the old one further back into memory. Years passed, and with them, the sense that the tape mattered at all. Officers retired. Files were moved, reorganized, and archived. The cassette recorder it was first played on became obsolete, replaced by digital systems that no longer supported such media. To anyone scanning the evidence room decades later, the tape looked like just another forgotten artifact from the past. An object tied to a mystery no one expected to ever solve. More than 2 decades after the truck was found, the case resurfaced quietly during a routine review of unsolved files. A newly assigned evidence technician was tasked with digitizing old media, photographs, handwritten notes, and outdated recordings that could no longer be accessed by modern systems. When the technician came across the small, cracked cassette labeled, "If anything happens to me," it stood out immediately, not because of what it contained, but because no one could remember the last time it had been played. Using updated audio software designed to isolate sound layers, the technician transferred the cassette into a digital format. At first, the playback sounded no different from before: thick static, low-frequency noise, and distortion that swallowed nearly everything. But when the software began filtering out the background interference, subtle details started to surface. The hiss thinned. The wind sharpened. Beneath it all, a human voice slowly took shape, fragmented and unsteady, as if it had been hiding in the noise the entire time. As the cleaning process continued, the words became clearer and the room grew quiet. The voice wasn't panicked. It was controlled, deliberate, as though the speaker knew this recording might be the only chance to be heard. Then, partway through the tape, something unexpected happened. Another sound appeared, not static, not wind. A second voice, low and distant, entering the recording without warning, altering the tone of everything that followed. As investigators listened more closely, it became clear that the tape was never meant to be a confession. It was a warning. Daniel's voice described specific locations, familiar roads, and a meeting arranged under ordinary circumstances, spoken with the calm of someone trying not to panic. He mentioned names casually at first, as if assuming the listener already understood who they were. Each detail felt deliberate, recorded with the quiet urgency of someone who believed they were being watched even as they spoke. Then the tone shifted. The second voice, once faint and distant, grew clearer with every enhancement. It wasn't shouting. It wasn't threatening. It sounded confident, too confident. Investigators recognized the accent immediately, local, unmistakably from the area. The voice referenced things only someone deeply connected to the town would know. Places not on maps, routines that had never been written down. When analysts isolated one particular phrase, the room went silent. The implication alone was enough to send the recording up the chain of command within hours. As word spread through the department, the weight of the discovery became impossible to contain. Long, closed files were pulled back out. Old interviews were re-examined. People who had once been considered reliable were suddenly viewed in a different light. In a town where everyone knew each other, trust became a liability, and every familiar face carried new questions. The tape didn't just reveal what happened to Daniel Harper. It quietly began unraveling a version of the truth the community had lived with for decades. The truth had been there since the beginning, sealed inside a forgotten cassette and left behind in an abandoned truck on a frozen Montana highway. It didn't scream for attention. It waited. Years passed, technology changed, and memories faded, but the recording remained patient. And when it was finally heard, it didn't just solve a case. It exposed how close the danger had always been. Some mysteries fade with time. This one survived it, because in Montana, the silence wasn't empty. It was hiding something.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.